be with you. Thanks for sticking around for this long. I know it's been a long day and a very hot day. It's great to be back in Morocco. I've been a few times. The last time was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was never this hot in October, but hey, there's no climate change. Keep that in mind. So I'm going to speak in English. Sorry about that. My Arabic is quite basic. My French is even worse. No, actually, my French is better than that. But we're going to have, after my session, a book signing. We have, I think, 300 of my book in French and English, I think, for free. So stick around later. We're also going to share the code for a free ebook, so you can download that with the QR code. So let's start with this. Last year, in the middle of the COVID crisis, I went to Lanzarote, not far from here, right? It's just across the water, more or less, right? Lanzarote, Canary Islands. You remember the scenery there. I decided that it was important to talk about why the future isn't all bad. Because last year it looked very bad, right? Like my job is to go and travel and talk to people. And that didn't happen in the COVID time, right? I do 100 a year like this. And then COVID, I did 10, right? So it was quite lonely, working on my online projects. And as I'm sure you know, you're looking all day long in the little screen, green box, right? That's not the same than talking to people, right? So I went there and I made this film about why I think the future is better. And Lanzarote is a perfect place because it's a volcano, right? It's a desert, more or less, right? So I went there for this film, and this idea of the good future has taken off like a firecracker from this. And when you look at the good future, I think it's important to remember what good is. Yeah? Good is not having 2 cars, having a big house, flying away on the weekend. The very basic definition of good is the Maslow pyramid, right? Safety, security, food, education, and love and belonging to some degree, but the lower part of the pyramid, right? If we all lived in a world where these 2 lower things would work for all of us, that would be a big thing already, right? I mean, here in Morocco, the GDP, the average earnings per year, if I'm correct, $3,750 for Morocco. And it's going up and down a little bit, right? So the people across the golf course from here, over there, they live in a different world than we do, right? And clearly, I think it's important to remember what a good future could look like and how we would get there. And now when I speak about the good future, my children, who are 26 and 33, they remind me that the future isn't good, right? This is the future, is what they tell me, right? Climate change, autocrats, war, nuclear weapons, geoengineering, long list, right? And the list of complaints, if you look around, you talk to people today, anybody between 15 and 35, 71% have a negative view of the future. Can you imagine? I mean, I'm 61, right? I still have a good view of the future, but of course, we caused most of the problems that we have today, right? For example, CO2, climate change, right? 50% of the entire CO2 in the world was created in the last 25 years. That's basically my life, right? In business, right? I mean, the curve is like explosive. 92% of all flying is done by wealthy or somewhat well-off people, right? Poor people don't fly. So 12% of CO2 there overall, again, right? So this is a very, very big topic. How can we think about the good future, and what does the good future mean? If you talk to people, they say, no, you must be joking, no good future, right? We're on the 2, and just not there, right? Climate change, war, inflation, right? All of those things that bode for a lousy future.
We have a choice, collective action or collective suicide. It is in our hands. Thank you.
Did you understand this? Play it again? No. Okay, this is my colleague in futurism, Antonio Guterres from the UN. Right? He gives us the bottom line of the future in his speech 2 months ago. Let's make it a little bit louder. I think this is really worth repeating.
We have a choice, collective action or collective suicide. It is in our hands. Thank you.
Held a great speech that at the end he said, it's our choice, collective action or collective suicide. And this is not just about climate change, right? Artificial intelligence, employment, genetics. They could be heaven or they could be hell, like every technology, right? So it's really not the problem that we're having is not that we don't have enough science or technology. We make the wrong decisions with what we have, right? And that's a question of policy and many, many other things, right? But if we look in this future, Kevin Kelly, who's a famous futurist colleague of mine in San Francisco, he says we should be optimists not because we have less problems, but we have more capacity to solve them. This is important, right? We're solving, if you look on the list what we're solving, in fact, climate change, for example, is solvable, right? It's not insolvable, right? Look at the list of things, right? You see this curve of technology that we're inventing, robotics, genome sequencing. We're going to share the PDF later if you want the shots, but you feel free to take them. But anyway, we're inventing like crazy. Last week I was at Pfizer. Right? I was looking at genetic therapy and using artificial intelligence for drug development. I mean, this is like every week there's a major thing. You know, now you can make spider silk, which is the toughest material in the world, in the lab. You don't need spiders anymore. Right? I mean, we're inventing like crazy. I mean, the next slide shows you $5 trillion platforms of innovation: blockchain, genome sequencing, autonomous vehicles, robotics. Right? So nobody that has the right skills has to worry about having enough work. You know, there's plenty of opportunities here. But, of course, we have to know how to take them. Right? 5G? Any telecoms in the room? Now, telecom companies always say, when you're connected, that's great because you'll be happy. Right? And I think that's primarily true, but not always. Yeah? You can also be over-connected, right? Addicted. That's becoming more common, right? 5G, we're going to have roughly 8 billion people on the internet in 2030. 8 billion. That's 4.5 billion today, but not fast. Think of the Moroccans across the court, right, across the golf course, right? They will be connected with 10G. Right? Will it make a difference? Yeah, well, I hope so, but this is really, really a very big fact as we're moving to this future where we have to decide how we're going to deal with this. Again, not just climate change, but a good planet or a bad planet. If you're looking at the last 100 years, many things have dramatically improved. Poverty, you wouldn't think so, but it has. Statistics say poverty has dramatically improved. Childbirth death has improved. 200 years ago, the average person in Morocco lived 34 years. Right? Average lifespan. You know how much it is in Morocco today? 72. Other countries all the way up to 85. We have doubled our lifespan in 200 years. Right? When I think about the accomplishment of this. But here's the great news, right? Or the bad news, depending how you look at it. Technology alone will not save us. Right? Technology is a tool. It's a fancy tool. AI is a great tool. Big data is a great tool. Virtuality is a great tool. But we can use it wrong. Right? We can use it as not designed. I mean, if you have a hammer, you can build a house, or you can go kill your neighbor. Right? Same thing with artificial intelligence, and you can definitely kill your neighbor with AI if you know how to program. Right? It's actually a lot easier than a hammer. You don't have to carry anything. The main problem of technology is this, right? Technology can be both, and it has no ethics. I mean, this is computer code we're talking about here, right? If you went to an AI and you said, you have all the power in the world to solve climate change, if you say that to the AI and you would connect the AI to the internet with an IQ of 1 billion, right? You know what the AI would do? Kill all of us. That's the most logical way of solving climate change, right? But that's a fact, right? But problem solved, right? It's us. That's not what we would want, of course, right? If we want technology to bring us a good future, we're going to have to govern it, right? Regulate it to some degree, new social contracts, right? For example, where does all the money go from social media? It doesn't go to writers, journalists, the people. It goes to 6 major cities in America, right? The average Facebook employee makes $257,000 a year. I don't know, that's what, 100x of the average Moroccan. Right? Right? I mean, it's mind-boggling, right? So why does this money get better distributed? Well, the problem really is that technology can be a present, right? Or it can be a bomb. The bomb of technology, for example, you can feel in Bali, Indonesia, if you've ever been to Bali, right? Used to be a really cultural place, a hub of spirituality and so on. And now the kids are no longer going to the drumming class or the dance classes because they're watching things on the mobile phone, right? It's much more entertaining. You know, changes culture, changes everything. So we have to think about what that does for technology because we have to find compromises and ways of going forward. So here's a great film that's made from supporters of Bitcoin. And this film shows one of the problems, right? When we have too much technology and too much security and too much supervision, as for example in digital money. I'm all for digital money. I hate cash, right? I'm fine with all, but I want to make sure I don't become naked. I mean, digitally speaking, right? Because of digital money, right? I mean, this is very important because, you know, in the end, if the state had digital money, then the state could say that money can't be used, you know, to, for example, buy a certain airplane ticket that is too much carbon offsetting or whatever it is, right? So here's a trailer. Okay, you get my point, right? You know, I think you cannot have 100% security and then 50% freedom because it's 150%, right? There has to be compromise. If we're going to have digital money, we have to find a way to still remain human. Right? How do we do that? I have no idea. But this Bitcoin commercial is kind of funny because, you know, it's clearly sort of saying there's another way of doing this, right? So the bottom line on this is to design and create the good future, we must embrace 3 major things that are happening today. Okay? First, digitization. That's obvious. You talk about it all day long, right? That's kind of an old hat, but I'll talk about it more later. The second one, decarbonization. Everything that burns fossil fuel, we have to do away with. Everything. And this is going to happen in the next 10 years. I know, it's hard to believe, right? It's a 150 trillion euro change in the value chain. Every company in the world is working on this problem, right? I'll talk more about it later. The last one is reformation, the third one. Yeah. Reformation is we have to think about what we actually want. Right? That's the question about the future of capitalism, the future of economics, justice, all of those things, right? That's a very big question, and you can't really take them apart. And this is why I was saying, okay, today looking at the motto of the event, right, the digital nation, well, let's add 2 more things to the digital nation. Right? There's no such thing as progress if we don't have a holistic view. Because you end up in a dystopian society. So, just to give you some examples, digitization of healthcare. This is happening very quickly. Apple, Amazon, Baidu, Alibaba, you know, jumping on this. In the future, we're not going to take a lot of pills. We're going to use technology to prevent our disease. Right? Look at these numbers in digital healthcare. Delivery, care, diagnostics, remote diagnostics. Anybody with a cheap device could go see a doctor. When they have 5G, that is, of course, right? But that is a future that we already seen in COVID. Then we have this, decarbonization, energy, protein, transportation, and investing. This is already happening, growing like crazy. Right? So-called ESG investing is going to be turned around completely. I'll talk more about that in a second. The last one is this, right? Look at all these problems that we have on this list. World Economic Forum. The green ones are environment, the other ones are more difficult. Social cohesion, livelihood, infectious diseases, geo-economic confrontations. I mean, how can we live in a good future if we solve digitization only? Right? Well, that's great. Then we can actually make more money doing digital things, but everything else falls apart. Right? The only person benefiting from that will be Elon Musk, because he can go to Mars when things go bad enough. Right? So not in a Tesla, but maybe a Tesla ship or something. Right? But here's the good thing. The green stuff and the blue stuff, big blue technology, not IBM. Big blue, it's a little bit out of focus. Can we focus the screen a little bit more? Big blue, was my glasses, one of the two. So big blue and big green go together. Right? I mean, the biggest change, Larry Fink, the owner of BlackRock, or the top guy of BlackRock Investments, he said the other day, the next 100 billion unicorns, right, will be in the climate technology field. I mean, this is where Morocco can score. This is where every small country can score, developing climate tech solutions. Battery technology, smart meters, agriculture, and on and on and on. It's completely obvious, right? If you want to invest your money as an investor, this is where you would go. It's a big problem. Everybody needs it. Government is going to push for it, right? So, quite clearly. So, let's talk about digitization. When we think about digitization, we have to understand that basically the next 10 years will bring more change than the previous 100 years. I know it sounds crazy, right? Because now we have all the things that used to be science fiction. 3D printing. Right? People print 3D houses in China, entire villages, with a truck that prints the houses. Very ugly houses, but houses, right? You can print your kneecap and your dental cap. Intelligent machines, self-driving cars, right? All in the next 10 years. That is going to change our world completely upside down. And some people say that's going to bring a kind of nirvana. Right? The technologists say that, of course. And I tend to believe some of that is true. It'll be sort of the ideal world where everything is done cheaper, better, faster. Like right now, the healthcare costs are going like this everywhere. I think also in Morocco, more and more costs on healthcare. If we can bring that down using technology, we can solve a lot of problems. And of course, then we have all of these things that we talked about all day today, right? I call them the game changers. Big data, cloud computing, the Internet of Things, voice language understanding, AI, quantum, 3D printing, story goes on. You can look them up at gerdsgamechangers.com. But it's basically a way of saying, all that stuff is getting real. This is a really important one down here, right? Genetic engineering and synthetic biology. Taking things that the body used to do and activate that to fight diseases. This is what mRNA does, right? The vaccine. This is not like the other vaccines. It's actually sending a command to the cell to get busy and do something, right? And now we can do similar things for diabetes. But think about cancer potential for this. I mean, lots and lots of discussions on this. So lots of change here, and this is really what's happening here in our lives, right? Everything around us is becoming technology, right? Whether it's cars or healthcare or financial services or telecom or media, right? I mean, here in this box is my second brain, right? Or in the case of some children, our first brain, right? Or the only brain. But in here, banking, music, films, dating. I don't date, I'm married, but nevertheless, could be in there. Right? Everything. It's mind-boggling. So in this future, we have this, right? Morocco. No, just kidding. Technology, humanity. Right? We have this overlap of all of a sudden. Increasingly, we have to ask the question, is that actually a person? You know about the Turing test, right? If you can't tell if a machine is a machine, then the machine can pass the Turing test when you talk to it, right? That's to be expected roughly by 2030. So lots of arguments about that. I believe it when I say it, but we've had many announcements on this before, right? But really what's happening is we have all of this happening, all of our work, our life, everywhere, right, is going digital. And even if you're poor, it's going digital. On the mobile phone, you can pay for things, or you can change your economics, you can talk to other people, you can make free phone calls, right? And of course this, we're going to work a lot more with machines. Right? Robotics, artificial intelligence. Our future work colleagues will be either remote in the cloud, other humans, or they'll be bots. Of course, there'll be plenty of humans left, which I'll talk about later. Right? But this is a fact of life. Right? If you work like a robot will take your job. Okay? Think about that for a second. The more you work like a robot, the higher up you on that list. Right? Thankfully, there aren't that many people that work like a robot completely. For example, the checkout in the supermarket. Right? If you work in a big supermarket, you know, with lots and lots of people, they will eventually do the scanning, right? So that your job is gone. Right? But if you work in a small supermarket, they will not replace you because you're the person that is in touch with all of these people who are customers. And you talk to them, right? Machines don't do that, right? So not all people will be replaced just because of technology, right? But clearly, you know, what used to be science fiction, I remember this, 1967, right? The communicator, Star Trek, right? We have that. Right? It's here now. And it's just a little while ago, right? Another scene from Star Trek from just 20 years ago. We don't quite have that, but I'll play it anyway.
One pan-fried catfish. Smells like the real thing.
So, the printer printed the dinner. We don't quite have that, but we have this. Meat from the lab. Thankfully, you haven't eaten yet, but it actually tastes good. I tasted it the other day, and now there's a machine that takes the meat that's from a lab, which is from cow cells, but not from a dead cow, right? From the cells, right? And you put it into a machine, and you print your burger. Right? Science fiction becoming science fact. Elon Musk, his robot, right, was 2 weeks ago. $28,000. This robot can do all kinds of things like, you know, do your homework for you, clean the dishes, put your grandmother to bed, and yeah, again, $28,000. Yeah, I have my doubts we're going to see that very soon, but this is of course Elon's thing, right? It's like you have to admire him and hate him at the same time. That's his biggest skill. Right? Anyway, science fiction is becoming science fact, and we have to decide today, with our society and with government, of course, how far is too far in this convergence, right? Using a mobile phone, yeah, that sounds pretty good, right? Using a headset could be good, right? Connecting myself to the internet, right? Yeah, I'm not so sure. You know, that's a good idea. A lot of ethical decisions, because this isn't theory. You know, today, if you have $2 million and if you're quadriplegic, you can't walk, you had an accident, you could spend $2 million, you can get an exoskeleton, you know, a robot equipment, and you can connect your brain to the robot, and you can walk again. $2 million and 2 years of practice. Right? It's possible. So mind-boggling how this is changing, and we're moving into a world where every old business you discussed all day, farming, energy, city, home, transport, retail, banking, and even government is going into the smart converter. I mean, this transition is happening. This is what we call digital transformation, right? Everything is becoming smart, and that is a huge thing. Well, this is happening all over the world, but it isn't going to save us in the long run, but it does add a lot of power to the idea of how we're going to have a great future. By 2030, everything is connected, cloud, and smart, remote, anything. And of course, the question then is it going to be safe? Right? Is it going to be secure? Who's in charge? Right? Because in some countries, you can use the same technology that you use for e-commerce and for selling to make surveillance on people, right? To spy on people, and then to decide if they should go to jail, right? Because of the data, right? I mean, this is not new, but it's more sophisticated now. And then we have the digital money, central bank digital currency. There's already 43 countries working on this. Here's my friend, Mr. Powell.
Looking forward, rapid changes are taking place in the global monetary system that may affect the international role of the dollar in the future. Most major economies already have or are in the process of developing instant 24/7 payments. Our own FedNow service will be coming online in 2023.
Yada, yada, yada. But yes, money is going digital. Is this going to be the end of banks? No, right? Because you heard him, right? They're going to stay in charge, right? Don't believe for a minute that we're going to see decentralized money, peer-to-peer money, Web 3.0, right? All the, basically the sort of decentralized concept. That is possible, but it's not going to be the default. And I think we're going to see a lot of mixed modes here, but clearly in 10 years, we're going to have digital money. Again, the biggest problem will be, how do I keep from being naked, right, in digital money? That is an actual problem, I think, for a lot of people. In pharma, we're going to switch from pills to data. I mean, just that is a 100 trillion euro switch. So not sick care, that's what we have today, right? You get sick, you go to the doctor gives you an injection or kicks you out or gives you a pill that you have to take for the rest of your life, right? 450 million people take statins, the cholesterol drug. 450 million people. It's completely unproved that it actually does anything. Could we prevent that with technology? By knowing who we are? Totally. Changing our lifestyle? I mean, this is what Apple is going to do, right? Clearly, they're going to tell us, who we are by measuring everything that we do. So, that brings us to the human revolution, the DNA revolution. Right? If you put your DNA in the cloud, once it's safe, it can be compared to others, and then the data system, the AI, can tell you if you are very likely to get cancer in 40 years. That would be good to know. Right? Rather than saying, you have cancer, die, right? Or fight. Right? That's what we do today. It's stupid, right? It's really stupid. We can do better than this. So here's the important part. Technology drives societies everywhere. But our ethics, our values, I'm not talking about religion here, right? I'm talking about ethics, values, humanity, what we believe in between us, right? That's what defines it. What are we going to do? How does it fit in our society, right? So ethics is knowing the difference between what you have the right or the power to do and what is the right thing to do. Okay, it's a difficult question, right? You say, what is the right thing to do in this particular problem? We're going to need politicians, governors, CEOs, leaders with wisdom. Right? Anybody can have knowledge. A machine can have knowledge. Right? IBM Watson has knowledge. I want a person in government that knows what they're talking about when they look at the future. I think every person in government should pass a future test, like a driver's license. Right? Well, probably wouldn't have any left then in most places, but this is an important thing that we understand where this is going. Buckminster Fuller, one of the most famous futurists and one of my mentors, he says, humanity is acquiring all the right technology for the wrong reasons. I would add to that, was 1974, right? I would update, humanity is acquiring all the right technologies, but uses it for the wrong things. So right here today, we have in our technology and science the potential to solve climate change. It'll be a bit of suffering and a huge investment. We have the tools. Right? Solar technology is now cheaper than coal in most countries. Right? We're building an intergrid to send the energy to other places. I mean, especially for Morocco, this is a huge topic. Right? In Lanzarote, where I spent a lot of time, the government, in their wisdom, decided to build a power plant for energy based on airplane fuel, right? Kerosene, right? They're burning gas to make power, right? In a country that has, or in an island that has perpetual wind, like storm the whole time, right? And sun the whole time, right? I mean, what in the world are we doing here, right? We can do better than this, use technology for the right reasons. And with technology, we have this problem, of course, that we have these giant international companies, many of which are my clients, so I'm intimately familiar with the problem. But these companies are so powerful now that what they put out the other end, you know, like oil companies, right? The externalities, right? Tax avoidance, privacy violations, addiction, surveillance, right? Comes out the other end. And I would say this is not necessarily their fault, nor do they want it. Right? But it's time that they start working on it. Right? I mean, it's time to work on the externalities because this is what we do. Right? Too much of a good thing can be a very bad thing. You know the most powerful company in the world today? The first one is Aramco, the richest company in the world, the Saudi Arabian oil company. Right? And after that, the most powerful company in the world, you guessed it, Facebook. 3.6 billion users, $150 million profit per day, run by one guy. Right? I mean, he's the king of the world in the true sense. Right? So something we have to think about, you know, too much of a good thing, I'll show you some examples and how that can be a bad thing. You know, basically what Facebook has done, and I make no compromises on this, you know, Facebook has essentially taken a shot at democracy, right? Because everything you read on social media, the bad things, you read 6 to 8 times as much as the good things. 40% of people get their news on Facebook, right? You know what the news on Facebook is? It's an AI, an artificial intelligence saying, if I show this, she'll click, right? That's called news. Right? I mean, it's pathetic, right? I mean, they say they're not a media company, right? Because they run an AI, right? So, very big problem here. And now we have the metaverse, even worse. The so-called metaverse. I call the meta-perverse, right? Right? That's because what we have here is the same than social media, only much worse. Right? And keep in mind, this headset, right, the Microsoft HoloLens, costs 3,500 euros, 1 year salary for the Moroccan. That will be a great future for people if they can, you know, afford the headset, right? So I think it's going to be great for doctors, dentists, lawyers, policemen, right? Remember the scene in Minority Report where Tom Cruise goes inside the data and, you know, superhuman. That's great, but it's not going to be the normal. Yeah. I mean, people these days are hard pressed to afford to download, you know, to use Spotify for whatever 10 euros it is, you know, that part of the extra budget. Right? So this world, right, this beautiful world of multimedia, which, yeah, it's cool, I like it, you know, but I'm rich compared. Right? We all are. We are in the top 10. That's why we're here, right? We're in the top 10%. We shouldn't forget really what's happening here when Mark comes. Hello, Mark. Thanks for joining us. Thankfully, we don't see what he's saying, but you know, this is what he usually does. This is what he said in this interview, right? The metaverse, it's about a time when immersive digital worlds become the primary way we live. I'm like, I'm not so sure about that. What have you been, you know, is there substances involved here in this statement? I mean, do you really want to live in a virtual world just because it's cool? Right? Been tried that before, right? So I think that's probably not, that's why I call it the meta-purpose, right? Because really what we want to connect to each other, and we want to get stuff done. It's about productivity. It's not about escape, right? I mean, our future will be very dark if we escape, not engage. Right? Technology is meant for us to engage with each other. And Facebook is now the opposite, right? Facebook is disconnecting us, is distorting the truth, manipulating elections, the whole thing, right? Just as an example of technology, not just Facebook. Right? We should be careful what we wish for. Right? this kind of perpetual virtuality party where we can buy virtual Gucci bags, of course, right? For the 10-year salary of the average Moroccan. So, artificial intelligence, same thing. Right? Fantastic when it's in the beginning of this, right? Assisted intelligence, automation, robotic process automation, augmented intelligence, right? That's going to be great. We can save money. We can be efficient. Public administration, social security benefits, air traffic, everything. Right? But this, down here, right? Do we want autonomous intelligence? Do we want machines that are artificially general intelligence? Because we all are generally intelligent, right? Most of us. We have social intelligence, emotional intelligence, musical intelligence, kinesthetic. We have a body, most of us. Right? Completely different. The only intelligence machines have is logic. Intellectual, if you want, right? And I'm with Stuart Russell, who writes the most amazing books about AI, when he says what we want from intelligent machines is competence, not consciousness. Right? Why would I want a machine that's conscious, right? That is a crazy concept, right? And we're going to need an international moratorium on building machines that can do this, right? Just like nuclear weapons. That's coming in the next couple of years as well, right? So technology is a useful servant, but a terrible master. And who is going to be involved in making this work, right? Companies, the government. It is the role of government to negotiate and intermediate between industry and science and the users and to make it work for all of them. That's the role of government. Right? So it's going to be quite a job to do this, I think, in the future as we're moving into this. I call this the good future of the handshake, right? Humans, machines. And because we can't say, we're not going to use technology because it might be dangerous. That's probably true for nuclear fusion. We don't want to blow up all of Switzerland with an experiment, right? But many technologies are both dangerous and also useful, right? So we're going to have to figure out how to do this, right? Balance, safety, security, ethics, control, trust. Remember that humans aren't machines. At least I believe we're not machines. Right? So we don't actually work with data. The most important things for humans, engagement, relationships, experiences. That's why you're here in person, not at home wearing a VR helmet. Because you want the engagement. Right? That's why we don't eat, food from the paste. Right? Because it's a little bit more than that when we come together and eat. Right? That's also why I think we need this. Right? We need a technocratic oath from everybody in technology to say, everything I invent, I will place human decency on technological progress in all cases, like a doctor. I will use these technologies to do good things. That's what we need. Because right now what we have is another cross, right? It's the Wall Street oath. I would do whatever it takes to increase profits. That has already declined a little bit. Nothing wrong with that in principle, except for not everybody can do it. Right? If everybody does it, we have a big problem. We end up with a world that doesn't work for us. So, I always say, when looking back at the last 2 years, all of the virtual conversations we had, right? The happiness meter. I always say that one hug is worth 1,000 Zoom calls. It doesn't make the Zoom calls bad, but it's just not the same. Because we work on a different level. Right? It's very important to keep that in mind when we talk about technology. It is not here to simulate or substitute, but to provide a tool. Right? Not a religion, not a purpose. Right? Let's talk about going green. This is a map of Africa. Map of Africa shows how big Africa is, right? All of these countries fit into Africa. China, US, Italy, France, Germany, they all fit into the total mass of Africa. Right? I didn't know that until I was researching how big Africa actually is. Right? And it's mind-boggling when you look at the power there. And you see what's happening with Africa, of course, over time. Right? 40% of all inhabitants of the world will be from Africa in 2100. Right? That's the statistics. Right? Of course, China, Asia, that's also growing, but flattening out in 2100. Of course, Africa is a big place, right? It's all different in different places. But another stat that's really important for you guys right here is this one, right? The red zones, the orange zones, those are the ones that are literally under fire with climate change, getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, right? And guess where you are, right? You're lucky, you're in an orange zone, not a red zone, right? That's okay, quite good, but everybody else here, right, in the middle of the planet is getting fried. Like today. There's forecasts already saying that probably in 5 years we'll have an incident in India where over 100,000 people die on a single day from heat exhaustion. I mean, this is not a theory, right? So, I mean, here in this country, you think about where are all these people going to go, right here, from the middle? They're going to go north. They already are going north, right? They're going to end up here. And this is a climate migration, right? Basically, if we go on like we do, by 2040, we'll have 250 million climate refugees, right? I mean, that's going to be an issue for all of us. And what's happening here in most of the world is we're building more and more money in our systems that produce capital, right? In many places. But the natural capital, our environment, is going towards zero. We have created per person 40,000 kilograms of concrete around the world for each of us. Can you imagine that? 40,000 kilograms of concrete that cannot be recycled. Now there's a company, several companies, reinventing concrete to solve that problem, right? I mean, these things are happening already in a very fast and furious pace, right? So, business as usual is dead or dying. Don't think for a minute we can continue what we've done the last 20 years, right? You're lucky if you can continue another 5 years. We have to reinvent. Of course, better technology means also more avoidance of pollution, for example, or plastic, right? So that's also good, right? The other thing is, of course, to make that switch to a green energy field and so on. So we're looking at basically all of those things I mentioned earlier. They're happening now. I guarantee you, if you're not on the path towards sustainability and circular economy, by 2030, people will hate you. Right? Especially people of the age of my kids, millennials, right? 25 to 40. They will not want to work for you. They will not want to buy from you. Right? They will divest their money, which they already are doing. This is just part of the future agenda, right? The future nation, if you wish. Right? So, biggest opportunity right now, green is the new digital. Okay. Morocco isn't going to become the world leader in digital economics or in AI, neither is Switzerland, where I live. Right? But this, what can you invent in the green economy? Battery, right? Technology, substitutes for batteries, farming equipment, smart cities. The story goes on endlessly, right? Lots and lots of great opportunity for green as the new digital. That brings me back to the good future, right? The good future is to get away from what I call an ecosystem, right? Where everything is about us or centralized companies. Like in the car industry, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, BMW, General Motors, right? And so on. Today, it's ecosystems. I heard that word mentioned today about 500 times, right? It's about this. Creating an ecosystem of services that go together. Right? Multimodal transportation. Right? If you're very lucky, you can continue with ecosystems for some time. Like to some degree, Apple has that advantage, right? They're both ego and eco, which is an ingenious way of putting things, right? But generally, we're going towards all the companies that are on this side are dying out, right? Being put away. For example, big pharma companies, they're solidly on this side with patents and all that, right? Now they have to become ecosystems. That's happening pretty much across the board, right? ESG investing, clearly, that's going to grow, but it's going to have to be turned upside down. It doesn't matter whether we make some extra money with ESG because it's a good thing to do. It doesn't help a whole lot. It's not really bad, but it doesn't really help. We have to invest money in the primary markets to get those new companies off the ground, not the secondary markets. And this is what's happening, I think, with the rebirth of ESG. That brings me to Reformation. This is the toughest. Right? We're going from this concept of GDP and profit and growth to a larger story: people, planet, purpose, and prosperity. Unilever, Patagonia, Lego, IKEA. Even oil companies are now on this agenda. Right? Even the state of Saudi Arabia is pursuing this agenda, trying to figure out what to do about the future without oil. Right? Of course, you can say, oh, that's questionable to what they actually are doing there, but let's have a look. Let's wait and see. Right? This is a whole different agenda. Because guess what? It doesn't matter if we make more money if we have no place to be. So you have to ask yourself a simple question, my age, if you're my age, let's say between 45 and 65, right? What kind of world do I want to create for my kids and the grandkids? Right? And what we're creating right now is a world full of problems for them, right? Where they are not very likely to have a better life than we did. Right? This is why we have things like Extinction Rebellion. And I guarantee you, if we don't take action on sustainability and on making it more equal, we're going to have 1,000x of the Extinction Rebellion in every country, scratching up cars, blowing up pipelines. Right? This will happen pretty much after the Russia-Ukraine war is over, sometime next year, when all the energy comes back. Right? So that is basically a move towards this new concept of building a new world. Not condoning what they do, I'm just giving examples, right? But it's clearly that people are ready to move forward and do new things here. Right? Then we have this global paradigm shift, and it's these people, right? The millennials, the Gen Y. The Gen Y was hammered in COVID. Just when they came out of school, they were ready to do something big, or hammered to stay at home. Right? And now all this energy is coming out. Are you aware that most of the millennials, especially women, between 25 and 40, in 5 years will take leadership of most major companies in the world? Right? Getting rid of people my age, basically, right? When we're ready to move out. And they have a different viewpoint, right? Here's the agenda. I can't go through the whole thing, so I'm going to provide it for downloading later, right? But these paradigm shifts are everywhere. They're fundamental, right? They're going from carbon to clean, from the regular engine to electric engine, from the millennial culture, right, to economics. Right? This is the most important one. The future is millennial-centric. And there will not be any discussion as to why you're not doing things. They just won't like you. They won't buy your stuff. Right? And they'll be asking for different leaders. So around the world, we're seeing this reflected in many different ways all over the planet. Also in education. Right? This is a hard one to understand when you're coming from a background of science and technology, which I don't. I used to be a musician and producer, and I studied philosophy. But I was in the tech business for a while, so I understand the argument. Right? We used to say, if you know how to program, if you're good with science, technology, engineering, that's the ticket to the future. Well, unfortunately, that's no longer true. Right? It's true today to some degree. In 10 years, no. Because guess what? Machines know how to do this. Machines know how to program. Machines know how to build things. Machines know how to run algorithms that can not replace, but definitely scratch with the radiologist, for example. Right? So what's our ticket to the future is to not be like the machines. Right? To be the opposite. I call that HECI in my book. Right? Humanity, ethics, creativity, imagination. This is what we have to learn, and this is what our kids have to learn to be successful in the future. Because in 20 years, we will have machines that far surpass our computing power, logic, and knowledge. And what do we have? We have the opposite, right? We have emotions, mystery, compassion, empathy, understanding, foresight, creativity, negotiation, design, long list. We should not be afraid of machines doing stupid jobs, like mining. Right? Of course, we will have some replacement there, and we have to deal with that. Right? But basically what's happening here in this regard is we're going to see a lot of different things, like around the world, we're seeing women taken over. Germany, now Olaf is not a woman, of course, right? But everybody next to him is a woman. In fact, the former CEO of Greenpeace, Jennifer Morgan, she is the climate envoy for the state of Germany. And look at Colombia, where you have a gorilla as the president, and his co-president is a cleaning woman. And this is a global trend. So I can guarantee you, if you're not pursuing equality and diversity in technology and otherwise, you will not see that future. Because that's where creativity comes from. Right? Diversity, inclusion, collaboration. It's something that we have to learn. It's hard for us to make that shift, but this is happening all around us. So in this world where robots are everywhere, and that is coming, right? Robots are no longer stupid. They can't quite drive the car yet, but they can do a lot of work putting the car together. The other day I saw an article saying that if most cars are electric, which is in the very near future, the repair shop, I saw lots of those on the way coming in, right? The repair shop is a robot. Right? You drive your car into the box, the robot comes out and takes a look at what has to be done, analytics, and fixes the car by itself. I mean, the electric car engine has 24 moving parts. The regular engine has 1,200. Right? Do I need a human to fix simple things? We'll see. Anyway, this is what's happening. In this pyramid here, that's the future of work. The lower part of this pyramid, intellectual knowledge, logic, data, and information, that's machine territory. Today, we can still laugh about this and say most machines don't really know very much. Yeah? But we can get a good feeling as to, for example, with language translation or Google Maps or planning apps or whatever, right? Or, of course, artificial intelligence used in the hospital, and, they're getting there. Anything that does not require human ingenuity, understanding, right? The good news is, on top of this huge pyramid, the human-only place. Right? That is deep knowledge, tacit knowledge, understanding, wisdom, purpose. When you meet another human, for example, later after this, that you don't know, it takes us an average of 0.4 seconds to recognize the other person in some basic way, without saying a single word. Potential partner, potential threat, boring, interesting, 0.4 seconds. Computers don't do that. I've been trying to teach my computer my name for 14 years. G-E-R-D. That's a hard name in English, like Gerd, nerd, whatever, right? Gastrointestinal reflux disease and so on. But my computer still doesn't understand when I speak to it and says Gerd wants to be, it writes nerd, right? Still hasn't learned my name after 14 years. So technology can fix a lot of these things, right? But we also have to think about protecting this part, right? The more we connect, the more we have to protect what makes us human. Now, it sounds like an aberration, right? We have to protect our culture against becoming roboticized also, right? And we have to help our kids to discover their culture and nature. There's already an official syndrome called nature deficit disorder. Right? People who don't go to nature because they're working on their things the whole time. Right? I mean, it's crazy. Right? So, in this world, artificial intelligence means computer systems that turn information and data into knowledge. That's the CEO of DeepMind, now owned by Google. Right? Think about this for a second. This should scare you and excite you, maybe. Right? If a computer can have knowledge, what in the world are we going to do? Isn't that what we have? I mean, network engineering and telecom company? A cloud-based computer will do that. We already have a lot of that today. It's called robotic process automation, RPA. But in the near future, I can have a bot supervising my network. I can fire 60 people, 60% of people working to do that with a bot. But here's the big deal, right? Whoa, come back here. The big deal is that when we think about what else we could be doing with that time and those people, we can free up new things. Right? So this robot here, right, that seems to have human emotions, it's called Adele. It's really powerful stuff. And then we think the next iteration of what's called DALL-E 2, you may have heard about this. It's an intelligence where you can type in any kind of image you want, like these kind of flamingo tap dancing, right? And it generates images. Right? And now you can type a video too, and it will make a video for you. Pretty soon you can type a command and it will print a human. No, just kidding. I will not do that. But basically, this is already happening, right? Knowledge. Okay, here's something important to remember. Right? Knowledge without wisdom is like water in the sand. Okay? In other words, it's cool what the app is making. Right? Is it really creative? Do we cherish it? Right? Do we think it's unique? A computer can make music, but who cares? Right? I mean, I care for something that is actually there. Right? Remember then, I think the old Zen saying goes further than this, saying, knowledge without wisdom is useless. And the second part is, wisdom without consciousness is dangerous. Right? So when we look at machines, we have to keep in mind that this is what they do, and it'll be great, but our future really is the combination of those two things. And this is what we have to learn, this is what our kids have to learn, this is what we have to learn as a country, every country, to live with those two things. Right? Basically, the future is awesome humans on top of amazing technology. The future is not just amazing technology. Anybody can have amazing technology, right? We want awesome humans, right? These skills that we have, the compassion, the design, right? So I'll give you some final thoughts and then we'll move on to the book signing, maybe some questions. First of all, we're entering into a world that's like warp drive, again, Star Trek, right? You hit the button, and we've hit the button now. You're just flying into the future like never before. Exponential, right? Basically happening all around us. So, you need this. Ears. You can't buy them on Amazon, I'm sorry. But you have to have a future mindset. You have to observe. You have to understand. It's not enough to read the research report, but do you actually feel it? Do you understand it? Do you have intuition? Jeff Bezos, probably the most successful businessman in the world for a long time, right? He said the other day he always studies and looks and focus groups and all these things, but in the end he decides based on intuition. And this is what we all do. Right? So if you don't have ears or you have very small ears, you are in deep trouble. So, here's the rule, the Bill Gates rule, 1 hour a day spent in the future. I'm not talking about Netflix here. Right? I'm not talking about watching films. I'm talking about reading the books. Here's some of them. Reading the good books. You don't have to read them as a book. You can read them on the Kindle, right? But when you do put an hour in a day, your future readiness increases exponentially. And after a year or 2 or 3, you're so far ahead of the other people who have put in an hour a day watching YouTube Shorts or TikTok. Right? And this is going to be our education, how we go forward into this future. And again, of course, you should read my book, which we're going to have later. Right? That's the ticket to the future, period. So, and also a final thought on this. Today, a lot of people think that the doors are closing, like the end is near, right? Nothing good is going to happen. And that is, I think, mostly because everything we hear on social media is about that. Right? There's very few good stories. Right? And the tech companies say, well, all we have to do is buy this amazing new thing and everything will be fine. Right? Nothing wrong with a new thing. I buy all that stuff. Right? But I think my message is that today, the doors aren't closing. They're opening. What we see today is the pain of new doors opening up. It's like when you go to a therapist with your husband or your wife, right? A new door opens up for the future, and it's painful, right? Because you have to do something. You have to change. And this is really what's happening today, right? And also very important when we look at the future is we have to have, what the Italian philosopher says, Antonio Gramsci, pessimism of the intellect, asking questions, yeah, and looking what's really there, but optimism of the will. You cannot go into the future based on fear, because you create more fear. Right? But you should not go in the future in a stupid way either. Right? You should ask questions, figure it out, but have optimism of the will. Kevin Kelly again says, the future is made by optimists. And look back at history, right? Who decided the future? It wasn't the people saying, no, 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 it can't be done, it shouldn't be done. It was done by people who were pioneers. So the future is made by people who think of it in this way. So, as a summary for the good future, right? To your topic of this event, you don't just need a digital nation. You need a future nation, right? A future fit nation. Right? And digital is a very big piece of this, no doubt, but not the only piece. Because having better tech, higher margins, more productivity isn't going to be the end of having a good future. It's just one of the steps to be more efficient, to have less pollution, to have higher GDP, right? That's all good, right? So, going back to what I said earlier, digitize, decarbonize, make everything green, reform how we look at society and what is the purpose of that society. That is the ticket. So, I propose for you the digital nation, the sustainable nation, and the human nation. I think that's the ticket to the future. So, thank you very much.